Tupac Shakur was born Lassane Parish Crooks on June 16, 1971, in East Harlem. His mother, Afeni, was a dedicated Black Panther, making her a target of local authorities.
She was actually pregnant with him when she was in jail. She gave birth to him not too long after she got out of jail.
She was just a young mother trying to raise her kids and trying to do something for the community.
When Afeni married Black nationalist Mutulu Shakur, she renamed her son Tupac Amaru, taken from an 18th century Peruvian freedom fighter who battled against colonial Spain. It was a constant struggle to keep their family strong.
What was going on day to day was surviving day to day, poverty. I mean, it was just us in a small apartment. Pac was loud. He was an extrovert. He was always outspoken and passionate, even as a shorty.
Then, in 1982, Mutulu was placed on the FBI's most wanted list after he was linked to the robbery of a Brinks truck, which led to 3 murders. He was eventually convicted under the RICO Act of 8 counts of conspiracy in connection to the robbery and sentenced to 60 years, leaving Tupac without a father.
So he kind of had to grow up at an early age with all the things that happened in his family and the conflict that they had with the police.
Television provided an escape and an inspiration.
Being alone in the house and looking on TV at families, and I thought maybe if I can be an actor and I could act like those characters, if I could act like those people, I could have some of their joy.
To that end, 13-year-old Tupac landed his first role as Travis Younger in A Raisin in the Sun, performed at the famous Apollo Theater.
He said that the first time he was on the stage, he knew this was something that he wanted to do because that rush of attention from the people was something that he had never felt before.
Unfortunately, Afeni was struggling in New York, and in 1984, she decided it was time for a change and moved the family to Baltimore.
Man, early to mid 80s in Baltimore, it was a war zone. It was tough.
There was a lot of violence, a lot of gang activity, a lot of rivalry, neighborhoods going on, killings that was happening.
Looking at all these names of people that died, things were just crazy, man, rough. We're at the infamous Greenmount Avenue, 3955, where Pac grew up. I remember us writing rhymes on this porch here.
Tupac was looked at as this guy who rapped, and the drug dealers at that time, they wanted to keep him out of trouble.
But Tupac hadn't forgotten about acting. And as a sophomore, he auditioned for the prestigious Baltimore School for the Arts.
Everyone knew it right from the beginning, that there was something special about this kid. He had a kind of an honesty and a dynamic in his acting. It was really rare even among the kids who come to School for the Arts.
We were in the same acting ensemble for his whole time there. And he's very, very committed, very truthful. He respected the art form.
At school, Tupac was exposed to ballet and Shakespeare.
I asked Tupac, what type of actor do you want to be? And immediately his response was a Shakespearean actor. He told me to attempt Shakespeare, the material, you had to be the very best.
Tupac made lifelong friends while at school, including actress Jada Pinkett. But while he was thriving, his mother was smoking crack. Desperate for a fresh start, she moved the family again, this time to Marin City, California, where she had relatives. Tupac was devastated.
Tupac didn't want to leave because school changed his life. But at the same time, he has to be with his family.
If he could stay, I would find a host family for him to stay with so he could finish up. But he explained that he couldn't. He cried, actually. as we talked.
In California, things only got worse. Afeni couldn't stop using, and Tupac dropped out of school.
He tried to become a drug dealer. He couldn't do it. He didn't have the heart because he said he seen people out there that looked like his mother that he didn't want to hurt.
Tupac decided to go all in as a rapper. And he managed to hitch a ride with Digital Underground, a Bay Area group that was rising fast.
The myth is that he was a roadie, but he wasn't. He came along to do whatever was needed to be out on the road, which we kind of all did. So, you know, when we did the Humpty dance, I was dancing, he was dancing. You know, afterwards, he was putting up the equipment.
When I first met Pac, we toured together. We dated early 90s. He was just a big kid, always bouncing around, always with ideas.
Digital Underground was featured in the 1991 Dan Aykroyd comedy Nothing But Trouble, and Tupac had a cameo. By now, Tupac had started writing tracks for Tupacalypse Now, his first solo album, but he was far from finished with acting. In 1991, Tupac Shakur, an up-and-coming rapper with Digital Underground, decided to audition for a part in a crime thriller set in Harlem called Juice.
Our agent at the time, Kara Lewis, told Money B that there's an opportunity for a movie if you're interested. And at the same time, Mun and Tupac were always rolling together.
I knew that Pac had went to school for it, so I asked him to help me. And as I'm reading the script, I'm reading, you know, this Bishop character, I'm like, dude, this kind of reminds me of you.
The Juice role, he knew that was his shot. That was the shot.
Obviously, we get to the audition, I clam up. Pac went in the room. Next thing you know, I hear is clapping, and he came out, he's like, man, they like me. And I was like, nigga, you got it.
Juice began shooting in 1991 in and around Harlem, where Tupac had grown up.
You need to have respect for me. I was almost your father, but the line was too Hey!
He threw himself into the role of Bishop, a homie who morphs into a ruthless killer.
So when I get a part, first I just try to find out which one out of everybody that I see on the streets is this person. And then I just try to mimic that person.
Bishop was a young man who saw violence as a way to establish respect in the community. And although that was not Tupac, he could relate to that anger and frustration.
Tupac's experience with Shakespeare and knowledge of Shakespeare emboldened his ability to play this kind of tragic character, because that's very much what Bishop was.
When Juice was released on January 17, 1992, 20-year-old Tupac was the breakout star.
Check yourself, Q. You gotta snap some collars and let them know you there to take them out anytime you feel like it. You gotta get the ground beneath your feet, partner. Get the wind behind your back and go out in the blaze if you got to. Otherwise, you ain't. You might as well be dead your damn self.
When I first saw Tupac, it was in Juice, right? And I was like, man, this dude can act.
He just pops off the screen, and he draws you in and makes you want to watch him.
The most memorable scenes is at the locker, and then all of a sudden he closes it, and Tupac's like right there.
What's up?
It was really powerful. That's really the moment where you could see his potential as an actor.
Look, I ain't never gonna be and you less of a man than me, so as soon as I decide that you ain't gonna be so be it.
Ooh, I killed it. You gonna be a star, kid.
Juice was a hit, grossing over $20 million, 4 times its budget.
Nobody's gonna remember this guy in the movie. You gonna remember me, because I'm gonna be the one doing all the robbing, the looting, the shooting, and the booting. All the ninjas is gonna remember me. All the brothers is gonna remember me.
But despite, or because of that success, Tupac worried about his image. And the release of his first album a few months earlier didn't help.
I actually took my grandmother to see the movie in the theaters. She was like, "Is that your friend?" She's like, "Don't bring him over here." Like, she really believed it.
People would be like, "Yo, why you kill Riot?" Like, it was real, which is crazy to me. But people couldn't disassociate themselves with that.
He frightened people, which is exactly what that role should have done. But it was so difficult to get away from that because he's a rapper, so that must be who he is. And it was so not who he was.
Tupac quickly got the chance to show he had acting range when director John Singleton cast him in Poetic Justice.
I saw him doing this interview. He was just saying, hey, you know, when I come to Hollywood, they're gonna see a new nigga out here. You know, I'm not like these other people. That's the dude I want to work with. He's like me. So I called him up and I was like, yo, I need somebody to be real and romantic next to Janet Jackson.
One reason I believe he accepted the role is to prove that he could do something else and that he wasn't just Bishop.
Despite Tupac's eagerness and Singleton's approval, studio heads at Columbia Pictures demanded a screen test for Tupac to prove he could handle the role.
It was a scene in the beauty shop, and he knocked it out of the park.
When he walked in, he looked at her and just started reading right away.
What's your name?
Lucky.
Lucky.
Yeah.
Let's cut the bullshit, okay? Now, what do you really want from me? You want to smell my punani? Hmm?
Yeah.
Janet was a big, huge star, and it didn't throw him for a moment.
We got back in the car, he was screaming and yelling, "Oh my God, that was Janet Jackson."
That was a blessing that Tupac got to play that part because he can connect with the emotions that that character needed.
What do you write about?
What's in my heart?
What's that?
The chemistry between Janet and Pac really speaks to their talents as actors, because I think there was almost zero chemistry between the two of them. They didn't hang out, they didn't talk, there was nothing.
It took me a long time to come down here. I'm sorry. I apologize.
To see them both on screen was really, really powerful and beautiful. To see black love that we don't normally see.
To watch him show the world that soft side of him was almost like exposing who he was inside.
Poetic Justice was a hit, the #1 movie in America when it premiered, with an opening week gross of $11 million. Paired with the success of his platinum-selling second album, Tupac was now making some noise in music and film. And one way he liked to feel the moment was by channeling a character that bridged both worlds.
He loved impersonating Tony Montana. Scarface played a major impact on the community at that time, just like Superfly did in the 70s.
One particular day, he was just Tony Montana. And it was so annoying, because if you're trying to talk to him, he's like, "What you mean, man?"
What the is that, right? Huh? It's not Africa, right? It's the box, right?
This was Tupac's escape. And, hey, this is what I do, man. I'm an actor.
You want to talk? Huh? You want to work for me? Yeah, man. Huh? Okay, so come down tomorrow and talk to man.
Meanwhile, Tupac's acting resume continued to swell. Before Poetic Justice released, he was cast in Menace to Society, directed by the Hughes brothers, who worked on Tupac's early music videos.
It really gave the Hughes brothers their first break. And Tupac was doing well, so it was natural that the Hughes brothers would come back to him and say, "Hey, we want to do this with you."
Despite their history, Tupac and the Hughes brothers quickly butted heads over Pac's character, Sharif.
They wanted him to play as a Muslim, but he's also a gangbanger. Tupac said that doesn't make any sense, and eventually he quit the movie or he got fired, depending on who you talk to.
6 months later, and still steamed about losing the part, Tupac and his crew paid a visit to the Hughes brothers on the set of a music video.
He told me he saw them. He said he went over to one of them. They was twins. I didn't know who it was, so I just hit the first one. That's when all hell broke loose.
And they got into it, started fighting. The homies got into it, and this is just terrible. It turned out bad.
I think they could have did good things together. That's what's so sad.
Despite the beef and the role that never was, 1993 was the year of Tupac. Strictly for My Niggas was about to go platinum, and Poetic Justice established him as an actor with mainstream appeal. Producers of the groundbreaking NBC sitcom A Different World took notice and asked Tupac to guest star.
It was a big thing for him at the time to do that, and especially with Jada and Jasmine Guy, another good friend of his.
Not only did he embody the character, but he added inflections and he added, or subtracted stuff and retrofitted to himself.
I mean, I'm a Tupac fan, so just seeing him in that acting role made me want to pursue an acting career.
In barely 2 years, Tupac Shakur went from an unknown to a two-way star on the verge of monster success.
He didn't even have time to sit and think and plan anything out. It was just coming so fast.
But so was the notoriety as Tupac continued to make headlines. He was sentenced to 15 days in jail, stemming from the brawl with the Hughes brothers. But that didn't stop Hollywood from knocking on his door. Tupac joined the cast of Above the Rim, featuring Dwayne Martin, Leon, and Marlon Wayans. It was the first role Tupac landed without an audition.
The director called me up and he was like, "We got our birdie." I was like, "Who?" He was like, "Tupac." I was like, "No! How'd you get him?"
Birdie, a New York neighborhood hustler, was the film's antagonist.
Every neighborhood hustler is charismatic, charming, giving, but you kind of feared him a little bit.
Pac had a love for the guy who was running the hood. He could relate to those type characters. He knew that they really existed.
Tupac tailored the role to himself, even rocking his trademark bandana.
Tupac was known for wearing those bandanas at that time, 93, 94. It was him just bringing that street culture to make the film seem even more legitimate.
But off camera, issues once again flared up, making it hard to separate the real Tupac from the one on screen. In Atlanta, during a break, Shakur was charged with shooting 2 off-duty, out-of-uniform cops.
They had stopped someone, and Tupac felt they were harassing the black man, so he just ends up getting into it with them and letting off some shots, and it caused a lot of controversy.
It definitely affected production when we shoot Above the Rim. Him getting arrested and having to go to court was interesting coming to work, find out what was going to go down.
The Atlanta charges were eventually dropped when prosecutors determined the officers incited the incident. Back on the set, Tupac settled into a groove, especially when he teamed up with Leon, who played Birdie's older brother.
He played a very hurt guy, and that's the beauty of his performance. That's what makes his character human, as opposed to just, the thug or the villain in the movie.
Don't stop, keep going.
It was one of those scenes where, when we shot it, it was almost as eerie as it was on screen. And that's very rare.
What do you want from me? You want to put my arm around your shoulder, little brother? Help you with your homework? Pat you on your ass and tell you done good? What the do you want from me? Just heard you was leaving. Came to tell you goodbye. There you go. You don't want mom's dessert. I know he added the razor blade thing. Everybody was talking about it the next day. It was like, yo, Pac pulled the razor blade out of his mouth. The director was like, I still don't know how you did it.
Snap your wrist. Snap your wrist. Take your time, dribble the ball, and snap your wrist.
I never did get that right. It's funny what you do pick up, though.
A criminal doesn't have to use a gun. That's just a tool. Not the guns that kill, it's the mind. So I chose the razor, because in the streets of New York, the thugs carry razors in their mouth. And when they get into altercation, they spit it out and cut. That would really scare somebody, and that was part of the fear that I wanted to bring to Birdie.
Released on March 23, 1994, Above the Rim, which was made for less than $7 million, pulled in over $16 million at the box office.
People love Birdie and just the way he operated, the way he moved.
He was perfect for that role because he made himself hurt for the role. I mean, that's what an actor does.
Every time I do a movie, they go, how different is it from the last character? They're very different. Every role is different. These are all different young black men.
Because Pac was so good at the gritty urban dramas, they would try to hold on to him so tight and keep him down there and not let him blossom.
But Tupac had bigger things to worry about than typecasting. More off-screen drama threatened to put him behind bars and destroy his career. Most disturbingly, Tupac was charged with 2 other men of sexually assaulting a woman in New York.
When the sex abuse case happened, that was devastating to him. That people would now believe that he could do something like that.
That's something that hurt him the most, is the response that he got from people in the community. People wanted him to be like this perfect leader at such a young age.
Pac being the son of a political prisoner, Pac's heart was in dealing with the community and trying to make the community better.
Tupac took refuge from the controversy by working on his next album, Me Against the World, and by landing a role as a drug kingpin in the film Bullet with Mickey Rourke.
When he had to go and act and be in these major motion pictures at the time, I think it helped get his mind off a lot of things.
He was excited about that. And this is a white actor. This is gonna open me up to a whole different audience of people.
Pac was making a lot of people a lot of money. Also, it was coming evident Pac wasn't guilty of everything he was being accused of. Studios felt that it was worth the gamble to give him a shot because there was no one else like him. And when you the one and only, you the one and only.
But not everyone in Hollywood was convinced.
He was actually supposed to be in the movie Higher Learning. You know, John Singleton says he wrote the Omar Epps character for Tupac, but unfortunately, all the legal trouble he was getting into, it kept him from having that role.
After filming Bullet, Tupac was up for a guest spot on Fox's popular cop drama, New York Undercover. But some cast members needed persuading.
I said, well, I'd like to put you on New York Undercover. I said, but everybody's scared of you down there. He said, could you bring me down there? Can I meet with the actors? And they won't be scared.
We sat with him and said, look, man, do you have a death wish? Because I love you, I think you're brilliant. And he went through each case, and we sat there for like 3 hours. I was like, all right, want him to do the show. And I'll never forget, he gave me a Thug Life t-shirt. And I draped it on my dressing room chair. And we left for the night.
Just hours later, Tupac was robbed and shot 5 times at a recording studio.
The next morning, I walked into my dressing room, and there's a shirt. And I just lost it, and I was like, damn.
The Quad Studios thing scared me because he could have been killed. And he was very close to being killed.
Fearing another attempt on his life, and with the verdict of his sexual assault case pending, Shakur checked out of the hospital against doctor's orders.
He said that he knew the jury in the trial that was going on didn't know that that happened because they were sequestered, so he didn't want them to think he wasn't showing up.
Being accused of a sexual assault is a big deal now. It was an even bigger deal then. When he was found guilty, he couldn't believe it.
California, that would have been a misdemeanor. In New York, it was a felony. It was what effectively is touching.
Tupac was convicted on 3 counts of felony molestation and sentenced to 1.5 to 4.5 years in prison. While incarcerated, he pondered his next moves.
One of our goals was for him to work with August Wilson. No hoopla, no press, just going up to do the work.
I contacted Tupac in prison. I sent him the script called Gridlock. He said, that's dope, man. I'm down.
After serving 8 months, Tupac was released on $1.4 million bail. The money was posted by Death Row Records CEO, Suge Knight. Once out, he was ready to get started on his new film, Gridlock, alongside co-star Tim Roth.
After he, come through that experience where he was away for a while, everybody was really rooting for him.
Cookie! Cookie!
Cast as a heroin addict trying to go clean, it was a chance for Tupac to flash a new kind of range.
And the type of socio-economic issues that movie dealt with, I love Gridlock. But everybody loves the scene he's stabbing Pac.
Here's what we're gonna do. I want you to stab me.
What? I can remember they had a knife, but the knife was kind of retracted, but it still hurt.
Ah! Ah, that hurts!
There's a take where Tim just kind of goes a bunch of times, and Pac is like, ah!
Again. Ah! Ah! Oh, okay!
Because I kept going, Tim, no, a little bit further right. Here, boom. No, little bit down, no. That's fine. How's this,
Looks good, though.
You think so?
Yeah.
That was a tough scene for them, but so funny.
And when it was time to change gears, Tupac did it effortlessly.
We'd done a lot of the fun stuff, and and this was one where we just had to sit there and be. He got there.
You ever feel like your luck's running out, man? I mean, lately I've been feeling like my luck's been running out. Maybe Cookie ODing is some kind of sign.
Gridlock filmed in Los Angeles in the spring of 1996. And it was clear Tupac had more on his mind than just remembering his lines.
Every night, he would go to a recording studio and work all night, writing and recording. And I asked him why he was doing that. And he, in effect, said to me, I've got a lot I need to say and get done, and I don't know how much time I have.
He wrapped the movie Gridlocked in June 1996 and quickly booked another film, this time playing, of all things, a cop with Jim Belushi in Gang Related.
I was pretty amused when I asked him to play a detective. He thought that was fun. Having been arrested and having dealt with the police on the other side, I think he brought, a knowledge and a reality to it.
He might have brought a lot of his kind of personal life, that sort of danger. There was a lot of danger with him.
While on set, Tupac felt his career was at a crossroads, especially since he was on the hook to Suge Knight for the bail money he owed him.
He was just owned, and we all know that. He was owned by the record company and all, and he was trying very hard to break free of that.
And he told me that he owned acting. So acting, he kept the money. It was his.
Gang Related wrapped in August. And days later, Tupac went to Vegas to recharge and catch a Mike Tyson fight. Later that night, he was cruising the Strip with Suge Knight when a car pulled up beside them. Pac's life on the edge was about to tilt one more time. Unknown assailants opened fire, plugging him 4 times. twice in the chest.
I was there at the fight that night. It was a bit of a shocker and a sting. We'd just seen him. This wasn't like we heard in the news somebody be like, we don't know when the last time we saw him. We just left him.
I just knew that Pac was gonna make it because he had just, he was the cat with 9 lives, When
he heals up, he's gonna be talking even more, He gonna make another album, he gonna rhyme about it. It's gonna be good,
But Tupac, the seemingly invincible icon, proved to be human after all. Six days after the shooting, Tupac Shakur died on September 13, 1996. He was just 25. His murder remains unsolved.
It's almost like a JFK thing, like, what? Not Tupac. Because you just didn't believe he was ever gonna die.
I remember just sitting there in my car, crying like, oh my God, like are they sure?
I feel like he died fighting for everybody. He was about self-expression, about giving back to the poor.
It was very hard to think of the world without Tupac Shakur.
2 weeks after his passing, Bullet was released, and Gridlocked followed a few months later.
It was the first time we saw him in a buddy role where he was playing a co-star to a white actor. And I think that was kind of the direction that he was going to end up going in.
I think that was a big role for him. Might be his most significant role because he wasn't a rapper, he wasn't a drug dealer, he was somebody trying to detox.
Later that year, Tupac appeared on the big screen one more time in his 6th and final film, Gang Related.
At the time, in 1996-97, a lot of people thought Tupac was still alive. And those movies only added to that myth and that legend.
The very last conversation I ever had with Tupac was about other movies we could make. One was he wanted to do a film about Nat Turner's slave rebellion.
The last time I saw Pop, I said, I got the movie that's gonna get you an Oscar nomination. And I told him Baby Boy, and we were supposed to meet, like a week later, and that's when he was killed.
He's a pioneer because rappers can't even survive without acting now.
He probably would have written, would have directed, would have produced.
He'd probably be the first one of us that walked away with an Oscar.
He's our James Dean. He's this era's James Dean. He's a rebel with a cause.
And the tragedy of what if is always going to be in people's minds because he had the talent, and we'll never know.
From an acting perspective, Pac's influence is to be real and honest. Bring the realest portrayal to screen as possible.
When they see me, they know that every day when I'm breathing, it's for us to go farther, Every time I speak, I want the truth to come out. I'm not saying I'm gonna rule the world or I'm gonna change the world, but I guarantee that I will spark the brain that will change the world. And that's our job, is to spark somebody else watching us.